Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. On the channel we post writing tips, unboxings, book hauls, book reviews and the occasional vlog. And today I have another book review for you, and it is A Stroke of the Pen, The Lost Stories by Terry Pratchett. This is a collection of short stories found that were written by Terry Pratchett under pseudonyms in newspapers and magazines, mostly from the 1970s to the 1980s. Such a sweet, I want to say Christmassy read. There are stories in here that are definitely for Christmas, but there's a lot in here that aren't as well, so you could read this at any time of year. But I absolutely loved reading this around Christmas time in November when it's dark and gloomy. It made me laugh so often. I loved it. Before we get into that, don't forget, if you like what you see, to subscribe to this channel. Your continual support means a lot, so thank you guys so much. As always with my book reviews, I'll read you guys the blurb first. Unearthed gems from the pen of Sir Terry Pratchett, one of the world's best loved storytellers. A truly unmissable collection of 20 rediscovered stories written under a pseudonym in the 1970s and 80s by the award-winning and best-selling author of the phenomenal Discworld series. These early tales hint at the worlds Terry would go on to create, containing all his trademark wit, satirical wisdom and fantastic imagination. Meet Og the inventor, the first caveman to cultivate fire, as he discovers the highs and lows of progress, haunt the Ministry of Nuisances and the defiant evicted ghosts of Pilgarlic Towers, visit Blackberry, small market town with weird weather and an otherworldly visitor, and go on a dangerous quest through time and space with hero Kron, which begins in the ancient city of Morpork. A must-have collection for Pratchett fans of all ages. This is the independent bookshop edition. If you get the Waterstones or standard edition, it is black, but I got this from Bookish, which is our local independent bookshop here in Abergavenny. On the inside, it is black with gold foiling, and you see it's orange there, and we've got red sprayed edges. At the start of each story in here, there is a picture or an illustration, which are beautiful. I will show you my favorites. This picture here. Oh, look at that. It's not Errol, but I still love them so much. I'm going to try to make this as spoiler-free as possible because it is all very short stories, because these have to go into newspapers. At the back, it tells you the dates that they were written and the amount of newspapers and the dates that they were in, because obviously they weren't released in one sitting because newspapers only had so many words to devote to stories. I don't have many quotes for you guys because it was short stories, but I do have a few. But I'll go through the stories in order and just tell you roughly how I felt. So the first story is How It All Began, which is the tale about cave people and Og the inventor, and I have a quote from page 5. The thing was called fire, and it was brought back to the cave by Og the inventor, who said he found it eaten a tree. Only Pratchett could write something that makes complete sense, and yet at the same time you're like, what? Also from the first story, page 9, Og discovered that seeds would grow and invented farming. He invented animal traps, which was a much better way of catching meat than hunting. Then he invented wings. I'm going to leave that there for you to work out what happens when he discovers wings. But I adore this story. One of my favourites in this book, I think. Story 2 is The Fossil Beach, which reminded me so much of The Last Continent by Terry Pratchett, which I'll put a link above to my review on that, which is a Rincewind story. It was people wandering through a door to another realm. Quite fun. Then we had The Real Wild West. This made me giggle because it's based in Wales and I live in Abergavenny, so I knew a lot of the places mentioned. It's about a town bully and the police officer, and it's quite reminiscent of Rincewind as a character. Because this collection is made up of his very early work, you can kind of see the beginnings of the creations of the first Discworld books in here. I got so much of Rincewind in these. Next one is How Scrooge Saw Spectral Light. This was the traditional Charles Dickens tale, but completely flipped. Wanted a fat jolly man, Father Christmas wants a new job. Really sweet. A partridge in a mailbox. This one is the second one that I absolutely loved. it filled me with so much joy. It's basically going through the song of A Partridge in a Pear Tree, but it's a postie, and I'll read you guys a quote from page 54. On the 8th day of Christmas, he said to the 8 maids a-milking, "Now, look, ladies, there isn't no room at all for you all on my bike. I'll just have to carry you one at a time, like on the crossbar." And he blushed. By the 9th day, Albert had got into the swing of the thing. "Right then, lads," he said to the drummers, who were standing rather aimlessly with penny stamps stuck all over them. That tells you all you need to know about the story, but the end, such a wholesome Christmas read. The new Father Christmas, this reminded me of a Christmas film called Noel. It's Father Christmas trying to retire, and yeah, it just made me think of Noel. The Great Blackberry Pie, so fun, and it was the references to Brunel, the famous builder here in the UK, were great. I do have a quote for you on that. Page 66. 500 tons of flour, said Mr. Plum, ticking them off on a long list. 3 tons of salt, 2 tons of pepper, 200 tons of onions, and 1 bay leaf. Every recipe you ever read is like that with the bay leaf. I love how Pratchett does this. Everything he says is the truth. Then we have How Good King Wenceslas Went Pop for the DJ's Feast of Stephen. This was the story of the good King Wenceslas, but flipped so Wenceslas is poor, which was, again, it just felt really wholesome for Christmas. Dragon's Quest, that's the one that I showed you guys the picture of. A prequel to the creation of Errol. I still viewed that dragon as Errol. Then we have The Gnomes from Home. This was a Pratchett way of looking into seeing things from another person's point of view. We then have From the Horse's Mouth, which again, really sweet story and about looking at things from another's point of view. Pratchett often goes into morals in his stories, but obviously in a really fun way. And these are definitely ones to have a moral lesson in. Blackberry Weather reminded me of the wizards in the Unseen University, and again, The Last Continent, the Rincewind story. The Blackberry Jungle is a town buried in plants, and again, I'm just seeing wizards in all this. They are the Unseen University characters. The Haunted Steamroller, it reminded me of luggage. It's an inanimate object having a life of its own, and again, I don't think Pratchett was getting onto this, but he might have been, but it made me think about recycling, reusing, rehoming, and yeah, it's very sweet. Editing Robin here, and I completely forgot some quotes from the Terry Pratchett collection of short stories, so here are them. I'm gonna pop these in, hopefully in the right short stories. So page 129, we have, "Now remember, this is Gritshaw. If it was anywhere else, people would start making all kinds of odd explanations. But in Gritshaw, and particularly around Blackberry, strange things happen every day and people are more sensible." This just reminds me of the Unseen University and the area around it and how there's always a leakage of magic. The Money Tree, you think it's going to be Jack and the Beanstalk, and it isn't. And it's a look at how money definitely doesn't bring you happiness, and also a look into greed. We then have the Blackberry Thing, which I thought, although the story wasn't one of my favourites, I did guess what it was that was causing the mischief. Mr. Brown's Holiday Accident. Now this, I got Good Omen and Moving Pictures vibes. However, if you read at the end of this book, the 2 people who discovered the stories and did the researching for this book, they said that in the Mr. Brown's Holiday Accident, there's a link to Mort. And I didn't see it, and neither did Matt, and I feel ashamed because I've read a lot of Discworld, and Mort is one of my favourites, and I didn't see it. So I'm going to have to reread Mort, and then read this book again, or at least that story, to find how it links to Mort, because I got good omens from it, but there's something about Mort in there. I mean, I guess you could have the idea of Mort was going behind the scenes, like Mr. Brown's going behind the scenes, I guess, but I don't know. It's something I need to look into. Page 215. So they found the missing piece of Mr. Brown's holiday. They couldn't find the final piece, and these guys found it. Now the thing I want to ask you guys about is, it says, "We're especially proud of that discovery, even though it is by far the smallest, as it contains a plot element next used in Mort almost 20 years later." And then it says as a footnote, "We'll leave it to you to find." Right, that bit, it reminded me of Good Omens, it reminded me of Moving Pictures. Mort is was my first favourite Terry Pratchett book from Discworld series, and I can't remember how having a background to the world relates to Mort. I am seriously shocked at myself, and it's not just me. Matt also couldn't place it, so if you know how that relates to Mort, please comment down below. I might need to reread Mort just to work this out, or it's going to drive me insane, isn't it? Ah! Pale Garlic Towers, I really enjoyed the ghosts. It reminded me of the BBC series Ghosts. Very cute. And the last story, The Lost Key, was my third favourite, definitely. That was such a fun story. It made me think of a little bit of The Hogfather with the assassin, Teotame, and the wizard and the hired help. That dynamic was fantastic. I then have page 175. I'm looking for a hired sword, this one said to the innkeeper. Ah, said the innkeeper, someone who can brave unimaginable terrors, fight nameless monsters, the usual stuff. The very same, yes, said the wizard. The bloke in the corner might be your man. The wizard looked around. Sitting on a bench by the fire was a young man with the shoulders of an ox, an honest face, and the sort of impractical leather clothes that no true adventurer would be seen dead out of. Is Pratchett taking the mick of the stereotypical fantasy adventurer? Page 182. Lucky charms, said Grubble. Got them cheap on account of the manufacturer being struck by lightning. Real bargains, genuine solid brass plating, only 3 gold pieces each to you, alright? 2, okay? 1, but I'm cutting my own throat. Grubble, who I know is a wizard, but he really reminds me of Cut Me Own Throat Dibbler from Ankh-Morpork. But those are all the stories in this. I hope I haven't given any spoilers away, but you can really see when you read this, Pratchett slowly creeping out to become the writer that he is with the Discworld. And even with the Discworld, if you've been reading them or seen my reviews, the link to my playlist, that's above me now, you'll know that the Discworld gets better as you read through it. So even with the Discworld, Pratchett was still learning to begin with. I mean, The Colour of Magic has a bad reputation because of that, but it was his starting book and it really sets the scene. By the time you get to the 5th Elephant, Pratchett has perfected his writing. But I really loved these stories and it was so fun seeing the start of Pratchett. I really loved it. So let's go into my overall review and my markings for this book. So enjoyment, I'm gonna give it a 9. I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. It's a group of short stories. Now, I do enjoy short stories. Some of these are very short. The problem with the short stories is that it's hard to read one after the other. But I read a lot in one sitting, so short stories for me can get a bit convoluted, but I did really love them. So I'm going to give it an 8. Writing style, 10 out of 10. It's Pratchett. World building, 10 out of 10. Plot, we'll give it a 7. Some were perfect, some not quite so much. Characterization, 10. Pratchett has never had an issue with character. Representation, 6. Look, it's the 1970s, 1980s. Everyone is a he. I think there's one main female character in this entire book. And finally, originality, 10 out of 10. But overall, I would say this is a 5-star read for anyone who loves Pratchett. And it's such an easy one to reread because it's so short and so lovely. If you love Pratchett, I feel like you will love this book. Just remember, it's his early work. Don't compare this to The 5th Elephant. He's not there yet. I mean, 1970s, when The 5th Elephant came out in 1999. So he's had at least 10 to 20 years more writing practice, and Pratchett released 2 to 3 books a year since he wrote these. People change a lot in their writing, alright? It's a learning, progressive art. And that's it for this book review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like what you see, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. If you'd like to see as soon as I upload, click that little bell down below. You can also follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Tumblr. I post my book pictures as well as my writing tips and unboxings on there. And thanks for watching, guys. Bye. Now I've got to get off this poof. My legs have gone dead.